Well, if I'm going to get up and do morning radio, followed by a 3-hour afternoon drive show on a Thursday following the NBA draft, it might as well kick off with Sade. I love feeling sexy in the morning. What's going on, Portland? Chad Doing here. Special morning edition of the Rip City Drive following last night's NBA draft. And if you're like everyone else in Rip City, you're probably still trying to figure out what the heck the Blazers were doing last night. I love the draft because not one single person that I talked to around the team, outside of town, who covers the team in town, not one single person ever brought up the name Young Hansen. Not one. And I'm going to be completely honest with you. And if you're being honest with me and yourself and everyone else that you know, raise your hand right now if you had no idea that Young Hansen existed before the Blazers selected him at number 16 last night. I've got my hand up in the air. Never heard of him, didn't know he existed, had no idea he was a basketball player in China. Not once. I never came across his name in any type of projections. I knew the Blazers had him in for a workout, but that's it. Had no idea who he was. Never crossed my mind, never thought they would take him. And that's the beauty of the NBA draft. Because if you're the Blazers or any other team in the NBA, you get a chance to sit back and see how things shake out. And the best part is you get a chance to come together as a group, and you've got to trust your scouting, your instincts, and all the work that you put into that. And the Blazers put a lot of work into this draft and the selection of Hansen, who, according to Joe Cronin, they've been scouting for a long period of time. Over 2 years. Over 2 years. They thought he was going to declare last year. They were hoping he would, but he never did, and he stayed another year in China and declared this year, and the Blazers apparently got their man. And the best part is, in the process, and they could end up looking like geniuses, they were able to trade back 5 spots with the Memphis Grizzlies and collect a first-round pick in 2028 via Orlando, and they got a couple of second-round picks in the process. So the Trailblazers went to work last night, and I just had this thought that went through my mind. They've now got 5 centers on the roster. Could this move last night and the selection of Hansen be setting up for another move that's we're expecting to come in the very near future now with the free agency period opening up in just a few days? So many different things to consider. Now, what I want to do over this next 2 hours is, one, give you a chance to sound off. So the telephone number is 503-248-0620. That's your telephone number. You can call in. As I've mentioned before, I am a man of the people, and that's why I'm in here this morning, because I want to hear from you. I want your take on what you saw last night. And big props to the Trailblazers last night with their Block Party Draft Edition. There were a bunch of Blazer fans who showed up at Moda Center. Big props to Chris Burkhard and Sean Heiken, who broadcast Rip City Drive live from Dr. Jack's. And then I thought Travis Demers and Francis Williams did a heck of a job. 5 hours on air live with no breaks going until the end of the draft with Joe Cronin's press conference. Now, one of the men who was on the scene last night, Chris Burkhard, is in studio with me now. My brother, I've got to ask you this. Had you heard of Young Hansen? Were you expecting the Blazers to take him? What was your reaction when the pick went down? Set up the scene, because you were out at the practice facility at the time the pick went down. How many people were stunned and shocked and had never heard of Young Hansen?
Well, let's see. Quick head count. There was, let's say roughly 20 people in that room, and I think 22 of them were stunned that Young Hansen was the pick there at 16. I think it was Sean Heiken was the first one who caught it. Someone had tweeted it out that was their pick, and it was just a wow. And what? And, yeah, nobody saw that coming.
Had you seen his name mentioned with the Trailblazers at all leading up to the draft?
I hadn't seen his name mentioned in the first round, quite honestly. I know, like, I was talking to you, and we were getting our plan together for how we were going to cover it, and I told you yesterday, I'm like, hey, I got this set up on my Photoshop. Every single pick, first round, if they trade back to the 22nd pick, I got it all ready. They select him. I'm like, great. The one name I didn't put in my pre-made template because I didn't see this coming.
That's incredible. 7'1" center. He turns 20 years old today. And he's got a 7'3" wingspan. Let's take a listen to Joe Cronin's opening statement. It was one of those press conferences I was really looking forward to hearing, because you see a pick like that, everyone's stunned, and I was anxious to see how Joe would address it. Here's what he had to say at the opening statement at the press conference last night before the questions started to roll in.
So we started with pick 11 and traded back to pick 16 and picked up a first-round pick from Orlando and a couple seconds. Well, this was from Memphis, first-round pick via Orlando, second-rounder from Atlanta, and a second-rounder from Sacramento. So at 16, we selected a player that we've been watching for quite a while, and we're really excited about, young Hansen. It's a player I'm sure we'll talk a lot about him, but we couldn't be more excited. This is a very, very unique talent, in our opinion. He obviously great size at 7'2", young, just turns 20 tomorrow. High-end skill set. His ability to pass, his basketball IQ, his functionality in the post, his ability to step out. We think he'll, be a good free throw shooter. We think he'll make perimeter jump shots as well. Defensively, he's a really smart player that, can be pretty versatile in the post with his size and IQ. So, this is a player that's, he's coming over to America. It'll be an adjustment, and it's our job to prepare him and develop just like we do all of our guys, but there'll be a big emphasis in pouring into him and getting him to his peak. There's also a reported trade from a few days ago. That trade call has not been finalized, so I can't talk about that today. So we'll circle back on that one once that gets done.
All right, the trade call he's referring to, of course, is Drew Holiday. What's funny is that even Hansen was surprised and shocked that the Trailblazers took him at number 16. But here's the good part, Chris. This is what I like about the draft last night. If Hansen truly was their guy, and you knew going in that was your target, and you're able to utilize the situation knowing that he was projected to be a second-rounder, you move back 5 spots, and you get another first-round pick and 2 second-round picks, and you get the player that you wanted, a potentially high-ceiling type of player in Hansen. All of a sudden, the cupboard with draft picks, unlike the Neil Olshey tenure in Portland, it's starting to get filled back up with assets. And I like that. So the Blazers apparently got the guy they targeted and were able to collect some draft picks in the process.
Which is why I view this a little bit differently than a lot of fans, right? A lot of fans are very upset by this pick, which at the same time, you're sitting there like you want the Blazers. All you say all the time, you want the Blazers to make a swing, do something different. Don't go with the safe pick. Well, they didn't go with the safe pick. They took a swing. And if they would have taken him at 11, I view this entirely differently because there is no recourse, right? There is no backup plan. I think moving back, getting that first-round pick in 2028 and those 2 seconds, replenishing the 2 you lost in the Simons trade, if this thing doesn't work, you have instant, wait, okay, we got another first-round pick. We can figure this out. So you've got some contingency there, which I like. And then also, there's rumors, nothing has been confirmed yet that, Brooklyn had been interested in him. Brooklyn had 5 first-round picks. Their next one was coming at 19. So you could have tried to trade back again, but then there's no guarantee that he's going to be available. And I think at some point, if you trade that, I'm going to trade 16 to move back to 22, maybe you start gambling, right? And the more you gamble, you eventually lose. So I think if you see the guy you want, it may be a reach to us because he wasn't mocked in the teens, but it's not a reach to Joe Cronin, and I think that was very apparent.
All right, here's another comment from Cronin. The question is, how do you find Hansen? Isn't it amazing how NBA teams now, in today's world with technology and the way that you're able to get information across the globe, like that you can identify a player you want who doesn't even play in the country, who's on the other side of the world, and somehow you get tipped off, you discover him, and then you send guys over to scout. It's amazing to me, but here's Joe Cronin on that process of how they found Hansen.
We've been scouting him deeply for almost 2 years now. We had a scout identify him during one of his under 18 events, and then we sent Mike and Sergi, our 2 assistant GMs, over to China that fall to go scout him live. When they came back from that trip, they left very, very impressed, and we were actually hoping he'd be in last year's draft. He didn't declare last year, so we continued to scout him for the last year, this last past season, and as we studied him more and more throughout this process through the spring, we saw him at the Combine, of course, met with him at the Combine, and then we're able to bring him in here and had a good workout here, and we're able to spend more time with him here. So, between our scouts identifying him early on and then some of our big key decision makers seeing him very early on, I felt like we had a big advantage in our scouting process and building our book on him as a player.
All right, that's amazing. Here's the one thing I know, Burkhard. Look, I'm not a scout. You're not a scout. And the majority of Trailblazer fans are not basketball scouts. I got to thinking about the draft as I was looking through the first round picks. There's only one player in this draft that I am absolutely certain of is going to be a home run. Cooper Flagg. That's the only guy I can tell you, and I'm convinced that he will be a very productive NBA player. But after Cooper Flagg, every single player to me is a question mark. I have no idea. Ace Bailey, Dylan Harper, VJ Edgecombe. I have no idea about any of those guys. So I just have to lean back and trust the Trailblazers process. And I'll say this, maybe the hire of Mike Schmitz by Joe Cronin is going to turn out in the long run as a genius hire, because right now those two in combination with their office appear to have good synergy. And I can look back at some of the decisions they've already made with adding talent to the roster, and they've been very good at that. So I just got to trust that they know a lot more about basketball than I do, because there's only one player that I can tell you right now that I'm sure will be terrific, and that's Cooper Flagg. Everyone else, I'm like, I have no idea.
I was trying to talk some Blazer fans down yesterday, and they don't like when you say that I trust Joe or I trust Schmitz. Like, I don't trust him. Look what they've done. It's like, okay, well, I've homebrewed before, Chad. Okay, I've homebrewed. I've made my own beer. I'm not ever going to walk into a brewery and tell the master brewer that I know more than him because I did something at home, right? So if I did some trades on NBA 2K and I read a lot about the cap, I don't know more than Joe Cronin or Mike Schmitz, and I never will unless I'm paid to do that job, and that's what I'm focusing on 90 hours a week. So, yes,
how was the
I
home
do
brew,
trust
by
them.
the way? I've never done that, but I've seen people that have done that. Did it taste okay?
I've done two, and my first one tasted really good, but I messed up the carbonation stage, so every single bottle was flat.
Oh, no.
The second one was great. And you know what? When you get a little bit of a buzz on the drink that you made, it just feels a little better.
Oh, my goodness. So what's the downside here? So I'm assuming with the Blazers, since they admittedly reached on the prospect, he'll be compared to every player that they could have had at number 16, right? So it's going to be Hansen against all the other guys they could have had. 4 or 5 guys that everyone thought they would probably take. I guess Hansen will be compared to them, the next 2 or 3, 4 years down the road. And then time will tell whether or not the Blazers made the right choice.
Yeah, he's definitely going to be compared to Colin Cowherd. Big joke if you guys get that one. But no, obviously with the Blazers selecting Cedric Cowherd and then being part of the trade, if Cowherd is a star, you better watch out, because Blazers fans will not be happy.
I think it was Malika Andrews, ESPN, who said Colin Cowherd.
Yeah. Do you see him tweet out too? Like, apparently I had a hell of an impact in Portland.
That's a bad mistake for a major network in the NBA draft.
Yeah.
I heard that and I was like, oh, it's so good and so bad all at the same time. All right, Chris Burkhardt's in studio. Chad Doing here. We are reacting to last night's NBA draft. The Blazers select 7-1 center Young Hansen out of China. He was projected to go in the second round, probably between 35 and 40, but the Blazers loved him, and they got him at 16 after trading back with Memphis. Chris and I would like your reaction, 503-248-0620. We're going to be with you up until 9 o'clock. Michael Shacker is with us, 503-248-0620. We're going to hear more from Joe Cronin, and we'll continue to break this down. The next stop now is free agency coming up in a few days. You got the special edition, morning edition of the Rip City Drive on your home of the Blazers, 620 Rip City Radio.
So the Portland Trailblazers
All right, this right here was the cringe moment of round one of the NBA draft on ESPN.
So the Portland Trailblazers select Colin Cowherd here. This is a young man with the ultimate bet on yourself story.
There's no question. I mean, he started out in Vegas, spent time in Portland, went to ESPN, and now he's killing it on Fox. Hey, Malika, I mean, look, I understand you got a lot of names going on. You probably don't know who this guy is or that guy is, like most of us that are covering the NBA draft, but you cannot say that. That was amazing. I heard that. I was like, well, that's going to become a meme instantly.
Oh, yeah.
Now, Chris Burkhard just literally in 3 minutes gave me a migraine. Like, I can feel it popping up on the right side of my head, and he started to get into things that are just over my pay grade. So can you please walk us through? Because I've seen it online. Some people refer to him as young Hansen, and some people are writing Hansen Young. What the heck's going on? Explain the surname or whatever's going on there. What's up with that?
Well, as I told you, what it is his first name is Hansen. His last name is Jan. But in Chinese culture, the surname is the important one, and so that comes first. So when you say it or you write it, it's Jan Hansen. Jan will be on the back of his jersey. It's just like Yao Ming. Yao is technically his last name. Went by Yao Ming, but Yao was on his jersey.
All right, so what will be on the back of Hansen's jersey?
Jan.
Now, is it Yang or Yong?
I believe it's Yang.
Okay. Everyone said so far that I've heard Yong.
We're all learning here, okay?
Oh, my gosh.
Chinese Jokic works.
It reminds me of Jeremiah Masoli, who was Mossoli until we found out it was Masoli like we originally thought it was. Those type of names. Remember that with Oregon?
Oh, yeah.
There was like a 2-week period at the beginning of the year where no one knew how to pronounce his name. So, all right, so Yong will be on the back of the jersey then.
Yep.
Do we know what number he's going to wear yet? Or that will come out later?
Haven't seen that one. So he does have introductory press conference for him is tomorrow at 10 a.m. So that's where we'll see the jersey. He'll get to introduce himself to us. We did confirm that he'll have an interpreter with him.
Does he speak English?
Very little.
Okay.
Very little. Joe said there is a little bit of a language barrier there, but when he was talking to him, he understood, what Joe was talking about. But he'll have an interpreter with him at that press conference. Obviously, probably have that interpreter with him all year long as they, go through the process and get acclimated. I laughed with Joe. I said, you got to get him to watch some SpongeBob SquarePants because that's how Ennis Cantor said he learned English when he was over here. So, but yeah, that's what we're going to see. We're going to talk to him on Friday.
All right, 503-248-0620 is your telephone number. Special AM edition of the Rip City Drive coming off the NBA draft. The Trailblazers had the number 11 pick in the first round. They chose to trade back 5 spots to number 16 with Memphis, and that's where they selected Young Hansen. And the Blazers also collected a first-round pick in 2028 and a couple of second-round picks.
Mm-hmm.
Do you like that, the collection of assets?
I never hate it, right? It's good to have those extra picks, and it's good to have, things that you can move around, the assets if you need them. Like I said, if this thing doesn't work, you have a first-round pick here in two drafts to, go draft another guy. And if it does work out, you still have that pick to go draft a guy. So it never hurts that you get added assets on top of it.
Yeah, it's nice. Oh, my goodness. What I'm excited about is the way that Joe Cronin was talking about him. Explain to me, because you were at the press conference last night. You had a conversation with Joe after the press conference. So walk me through some of the conversation you had with Joe Cronin.
Joe was talking about it in the presser, but I asked Joe, I said, Joe, you said you scouted this kid for 2 years now, right? So obviously something stood out day one. Like, what was it day one that made you and your team say, we got to continue to watch this guy? And without hesitation, he said the basketball IQ. The guy, he has a great knowledge of the game. Like, he didn't even talk about the skills. It was just the knowledge of the game. And, I looked at him and I go, so some of those things that are a lot harder to teach. And he's like, exactly. Like, he has that part. And, basically alluding to the fact that we're confident that, if he has offensive holes, we can fix those. If he has defensive holes, we can fix those. But he has a great knowledge of the game, and that's important.
I love hearing that because I want a team filled with high IQ guys who can do a little bit of everything. And it sounds like they like his skill set, not just on the offensive end as a passer and what he can do with the shooting and being able to score down low, but defensively, too, being a force.
Yeah, and the thing is, too, don't act like being a smart basketball player is some overblown or cliche answer too, because we've seen players come through Portland and we've seen players in this league who are just, they do not have their head on their shoulders when it just comes to being smart on the court. I mean, and it sometimes it runs them out of the league. I have literally watched players before struggle to get through a simple shooting drill because they just could not compute what coach was telling them to do, right? Thomas Robinson is a one, too, that, like, phenomenal athlete.
Yeah.
Basketball IQ might have been just lacking a little bit.
Here's Joe Cronin. You know, the big question was, after the selection, was he the target? Like, did they go into the draft looking to get young Hansen?
The question is always how far can you move back and still have a realistic chance of getting him, and how viable is it that you can move back into that range that makes sense? So a lot of these trades that happen, you know, during the draft, they're often on the clock. You know, the team, you'll have a lot of things set up as far as what are the terms that we're looking at, what is this team willing to give in order to move up, and you try to, you know, stack all those together and make decisions based on, okay, who's still viable now that they've seen what just happened at pick 10, and they make a decision and move back. And it worked out well for us. We thought we were able to move back 5 spots, pick up some nice assets, and still get our guy.
All right. He was their guy. And I think last year they got Klingon when the Blazers came up to pick and Klingon was still there. He was the top player on their board at that time. So they got the guy they wanted at that spot too. It's nice when you go into a draft, regardless of what anyone else thinks, and you can get your target or nail your target or be able to, you know, put yourself in a position to get that guy. And it really doesn't matter whether he's a second-round projection or first-round projection. You know, I was talking about this with Travis, and we've talked about this over the years. Like, when you go into a draft, whatever it takes to land the guy that you want, regardless of what anyone else thinks, get him. And they did that.
Right. Oh, but he was a projected second rounder, so you got to wait to – okay, so – if you could go redo it again, if you're Denver, do you wait to the second round to pick Jokic because he was a projected second rounder? You know what I mean? Like, there was a lot of teams who passed on him because they didn't see it coming. Maybe there's a lot of teams who might have passed on this guy and you just went and grabbed him because, you know what, that's the guy you wanted.
I wonder how long it's going to take him before he can contribute to this team.
I think it's going to be a minute. I mean, being 20 years old today, right? Today is his birthday. Hell of a birthday present, right? Getting drafted. But I think you got to come in. The language barrier is probably going to be the first thing, and that might take some time to get going, right? To get on the same page. But at the end of the day, too, that basketball knowledge, I think, is going to help him because it doesn't matter whether you're speaking Chinese or English or Italian or whatever. The language of basketball translates, right? And that knowledge is going to help him get on the court and just be able to go.
Well, under Olshey, the team was littered with a large number of undersized guards. Now it's centers. They got 5 centers. There's 2 clips I want to get your reaction to, Burkhard. First off, Joe was asking about having 5 centers on the roster and how that math works.
No, I'm not worried about. We have a lot of centers right now, a lot of good ones. I think we'll figure that out over time. You know, we approached every draft with we're going to draft the best player available, or we definitely make that a goal of ours, and this was no different. You know, and we'll figure it out afterwards. But we'll see how this summer goes, and you know who's here at the start of the season. But I expect even if all of them are here, okay, we have 5 centers. Let's figure it out.
All right, 5 centers. That's a big number. What's your reaction to that?
Well, I mean, I think you can read between the lines a little bit. I think right there he said, even if all 5 of them are here, right? He's definitely trying to wheel and deal, and he knows that. I think the hard part is you got one center that, you know, by all accounts has an inflated contract to what he's bringing to the floor, and you have another center who can't get to the floor, right? And those things make it hard. But if they can get off those guys, then, yeah, they got some room for Jan to get in there. But at the same time, Chad, I think – you got to understand, too, that they have the ability with 5 centers. They still want to get that number down. You don't want to go into the year with 1/3 of your active roster being centers. You know what I mean? Especially like Jan, I don't know if he's a center, just like Klingon. He's not a power forward center. He's a center, right? And so you want to free up some of that space. But at the same time, I don't know if you want to go into the year with your center rotation being a second-year Donovan Klingen, a rookie Jan Hansen, and then Dwap Reith, right? You need that 8 in there, too, to help facilitate this thing.
I was wondering last night, whether or not they would put him in the G League for playing time and development. I asked Travis that, and Travis doesn't think they'll put him in the G League only because that game is more geared towards guard play. And, he wasn't quite sure how productive G League minutes would be for a guy like Hansen. I don't know how to answer that.
Yeah, I don't know how to answer that either. I do think there could be benefit in the fact that obviously now that you have Jonah Hurskew down there, right? You have the Chauncey Billups guy who is running his thing, so he can run that offense the way that Chauncey would run it up top and have that continuity. But I also think for a guy like Jan, why just throw him right down to the G League when you already have those hurdles of learning English and getting acclimated and all that stuff? Throw him to the G League and then bring him back up where he has to learn everything. I think it's best for him not to learn 2 sets of teammates and 2 sets of coaches. And just put him in Portland and just let it run.
I agree. Here's the other point, and I thought it was a good question. He couldn't name Drew Holiday by name because the trade's not official yet, and he's not allowed to talk about it. But he was asked about that move and the draft. So you bring in Holiday, who's an aging guy in the NBA, and then you draft a young player out of China who's more of a developmental project, who's just 20 years old. How do you balance the win now moves versus selecting players in the draft? Here's what Joe had to say.
Well, I think in the draft in general, especially if you're making a selection, you're treating that ideally in a vacuum where you're trying to get a talented player that is a long-term addition to your group. Yes, some teams draft for need, and some teams draft based on certain skill sets that can, speed up their winning process. But generally speaking, I just look at the draft on its own. Like we need to go out for the Trailblazers. You hear me say this all the time. We got to get more talented, and this for us was an opportunity to do that. And yes, adding another 20-year-old to this roster may not point directly to win now maneuvers, but just trying to balance getting better for the long term and trying to maximize this roster for next season. So it's a delicate balance. I understand that.
But isn't that the job of the GM, to be a visionary? So you're trying to worry about the team and what it needs today to compete, but at the same time, you can't forget about the future. So I can understand that about being a delicate process, because you always want to have young guys on the roster who are developing that you can plug in when they're ready to go.
Absolutely. You have to. It's when you get the mixes where guys are going, we're full on a championship contender, but we're also building our future core, right? I think you saw a little bit of that in Golden State. Like, we're still hanging on to be a championship contender, but Jonathan Kuminga and Moody and these guys are our future core. And then now what did that do? You got an irritated Kuminga who's probably played his last game as a Warrior because playing time and all that stuff. So there is a very, very delicate balance with it, but you have to do those things to be good in the long run.
So what else was going on out at the PF last night? Just being around some of the media members, the people that cover the team, like what were some of the main topics of conversation about the team? Like what were people wondering, talking about, discussing, questions, all of that?
Well, obviously there was the conversation around Drew Holiday and Scoot Henderson and what that starting point guard spot looks like.
What was the consensus on that?
I think a lot of people are still leaning Scoot, right? And I am as well. And something that you and I have brought up, and I've said this multiple times about how I think the idea of bringing someone in to be a mentor is so overblown, right? But Sean Hyken made an incredible point that I didn't think about, and that was look at Chris Paul's short tenure in Oklahoma City. He wasn't brought in to be a mentor to SGA. He was brought in to play.
Yeah.
He was the starting guard behind the guy who was their future point, or ahead of the guy who was their future point guard in SGA, bestowed all his knowledge upon him. They put together a really good year in a year that everyone thought Oklahoma City was going to falter.
Didn't they win almost 50 games that
year?
They
put it together. They did. It was a great year.
Yeah.
And then he bounces. Now he's Golden State and San Antonio and all that. But he was there not to be a mentor to SGA. He was there to play. And then being a mentor was a byproduct of being there. Like, it wasn't the reason he was there. So I see Drew Holiday kind of in that same mold. He's brought here to play. Being a mentor to Scoot is just a byproduct of being here.
Well, even if Holiday doesn't start, and I'm with you, I think Scoot and Shaden will be the starting backcourt. But even if Holiday doesn't start, he's going to get as many minutes as he wants. Chauncey Billups, he's going to play him because that's a Chauncey Billups prototype out there on the floor. But, he'll get plenty of minutes. Holiday's not going to be sitting on the bench and just rotting away. He'll get plenty of action and a chance to play whether he's starting or not. I just like the idea of clearing the pathway to where you can have your young guards that you drafted and spend a lot of capital on to get out there and start really playing.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what I want to see. But then, so that was the one topic. And then obviously the other topic, as soon as that 16 pick dropped, the topic was, okay, where's Ayton and Robert Williams fit in, all this stuff. People were worried about Donovan Clingan. No one was worried about Donovan Clingan. Everyone was talking about, okay, something bigger has to be happening because there's spots that need to be freed up in the long run now.
I'm excited about that. Cronin was also asking about the fan base freaking out, which I think is pretty funny. Because as a GM, you can't make decisions based on how the fan base is going to react. But here's Joe when asked about the fan base freaking out after they picked Hansen with the 16th selection in the draft.
Because he's a very capable player, a very talented young man that has a very bright future. And I would just give him some time, let him settle in and watch him grow. And I think everyone will be pleasantly surprised.
He was also asked, does he consider the fan base when making a selection like that?
We care about our fan base. We want our fans to be excited about what we're building, where we're headed, what next season's going to look like, what the big picture looks like. Like that's important to us. So, I think in times when we make what some would deem a questionable move, you hope that they just trust that we're doing our best to make the best decisions for this club, and that the fans will be patient with what we're trying to achieve. Like I said, with a young player like this, how do we develop him, and how do we help him take these steps to be an impactful guy for us?
That's a great answer by Joe. He's getting really good at the press conferences. If that same question was asked to Neil Olshey would have been like, no, why would I give an F what the fans think? Screw them. I'm smarter than they are.
Right.
But Cronin handled that with class in the way he answered that. But no.
To be fair, though, the way Cronin answered it is the right answer. The way Neil Olshey answered it is also the right answer, because you can't make your decisions based on how the fans are going to react. You have to think about this in your vacuum about trying to make your team better, which is what Joe Cronin ended up saying. But again, very smart to make sure that the fans were acknowledged in his answer, because they have to be acknowledged at some point.
Yeah, it's like, hey, no, we care about the fan base. You just got to trust that we're out there. We're not just flying by the seat of our pants. We're doing our due diligence to make sure that we do our best to make the right decisions for the franchise, which is great. That was a shocker. I was like, wait, who? Who'd they take?
Yeah, it definitely was. But again, if they've been scouting this guy for 2 years and they zeroed in on him and he was their guy and he was the top of their board, I mean, a lot of those guys that were available at 16 who were picked 17, 18, 20, etc., like they might not be in the league for a long time because it's just the nature of the draft. So you just never know.
I love the synergy between him and Schmitz. They appear to have a great working relationship. They complement each other well. And some of the players they've already brought in have been terrific. Denny Avdia. None of us knew that they were really after that guy until they got him. Shaden Sharp, Scoot Henderson, and then, of course, Tamani Kamara. They made sure he was a part of the deal because they knew what they were getting in him.
I would say with the moves they've made, even if some of these guys don't pan out as the stars that we want them to be, like, I think it's clear to me that Shaden Sharp is an NBA basketball player, right? It's clear to me that Donovan Clingan is an NBA basketball player. Scoot, like, these guys are going to have careers. If it doesn't pan out and they're just career rotation guys, you still didn't draft a guy who was 2 years in the league and done. Like, these are some guys who have played. So they took a risk here, went out of their comfort zone a little bit, and I don't think that's a bad thing.
All right, Chris Burkhard, Chad Doing. We're just chilling on a Thursday morning, special AM edition of the Rip City Drive as we react to the 2025 NBA Draft. 503-248-0620 is your telephone number. If you want to jump on board, we'd love to get your take on what you thought about the draft last night. Here on your home of the Blazers, 620 Rip City Radio. All right, the Trailblazers select 7-1 center Young Hansen out of China last night. A projected second rounder, but the Blazers loved him, and they took him at number 16 after trading back 5 spots with Memphis. Now, the most famous basketball player from China is who? Yao Ming, by far, not even close. He's like a legend.
Yes.
Well, in honor of Yao Ming, and now the Trailblazers have selected Young Hansen. A couple of clips for you that I think are pretty awesome. I asked Chris if Hansen speaks English, and it appears that he doesn't or speaks very little English. So he'll have a translator, which is good. It's going to take some work from the franchise to, make sure that he's comfortable and gets acclimated to, being in the States and living in a totally different part of the world. I can't imagine doing that at 20 years old. But Shaquille O'Neal, when he was at the Hall of Fame at his induction ceremony, had this to say about Yao. Take a listen.
Yao Ming was the first to block my shot 3 times in a row. And people like to say he's 7'7", but he's really like my favorite convenience store, 7-Eleven. He was a great player. And he tricked me. 3 years, I never spoke to Yao, I thought it was a language barrier there. And then one game, he hit me with a Hakeem Olajuwon bing, bing, fadeaway. And I said, hey, Yao, nice move. And he said, thanks, my brother. I said, whoa. You speak English? He's like, Shaq, you never talk to me. Of course I speak English. Damn.
All right, so just a reminder, don't hesitate to speak to Young. He might speak enough English to where you can have a conversation with him.
He might. Some of those guys who English is their second language, they play it up a little bit, and it's kind of funny. It's like I think like a couple of the Timbers players, they would do it just so that you wouldn't interview them. Don't speak English, and okay, guess I won't do an interview with you. And then he just laughs at you as you walk away.
and then I love this clip here. Here's Yao at his induction ceremony.
Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. When I heard that I would be the first speaker in tonight, I think maybe somebody made a mistake. Don't laugh, because I think this spot belonged to great Allen Iverson. You know why? Because I need more practice than him.
That's good. Nice work.
He's
nice
got
work.
jokes.
Yes. Now, I like this exchange here, but apparently Hansen's already got a nickname, Chinese Jokic. That's big time right there.
I think it's lazy. I think it's lazy. What? Because he can pass Jokic. I mean, I get Jokic is good, but Chinese Sabas is right there for the taking. We went with Jokic. I think you got to call him the Chinese Sabas.
I would feel better about the Chinese Sabas for sure. Here's the exchange with Joe Cronin.
Joe, is Chinese Jokic a fitting nickname for him?
Well, it's nobody's Jokic. That's a tough one. That's a big shoes to fill. But as far as, his ability to pass the ball, there's not too many his size that can do it like he does.
Yeah, that's good praise right there. High praise. I want to ask you this question, Chris. Like, what's the worst case scenario? Like, if Hansen ends up being a bust and it doesn't work out, is it really
I don't think it is
costly?
I absolutely don't think it is. We're talking about a mid first round pick. That it's okay. Now, if Jan ends up being a bust and you drafted him 3rd overall, that's costly, right? You drafted him 4th overall, it's costly. But we're talking about the 16th overall pick when you got assets on top of that. I don't think of it in the context that you drafted Young Hansen. You drafted Young and got a first-round pick and got 2 second-round picks. So if he ends up not being great or doesn't pan out, you can wipe your hands of this one easily.
I think Curtin Hillsborough just reached out to me. I think he made a good point. I asked him if he liked the pick, and he said, how could I know? I hate that Bryant was still there at 11, but I don't know if Young can play. I'm waiting until Summer League. And that's really where I'm at. I didn't scout Young Hansen. I wasn't over in China. I haven't been looking at his tape for 2 years. I have no idea.
Yeah. I would hesitate here and make sure Blazer fans understand that I would not judge him if he goes in and has an absolutely terrible summer league.
No,
because summer leagues are not set up for a guy like him to have uber success.
The one thing I do like, I mean, you got to admit, like Joe Cronin, let's just take a look back at the last week. So he made 2 unpopular moves. One, in bringing in Drew Holiday in the trade with Boston. And the reason why people didn't like that move, the majority, at least the fans that I heard from, the cost of Holiday's contract and the fact that he's like 8 years older than Anthony Simon. So people have a hard time seeing why that makes sense. And then he turns around and they take young Hansen at number 16 in the first round, a projected second rounder. See, what I love about that is that Neil Olshey spent his entire tenure at Portland never taking a swing, never taking a chance. He always did the safe move, working in the margins. I mean, that's pretty much what he did. But I respect general managers who have the guts to go out on a limb and be aggressive and do what they truly believe is best. Don't hesitate. If you really think that young Hansen's the guy, then take him. And if you think Drew Holiday is the right choice to help your team win, then take the swing. I'd much rather have someone that takes a few risks instead of someone that's always a little gun shy.
Right. And sometimes the unpopular opinion is the right move to do. And it's not the same circumstance, but keep in mind that there was not a Golden State fan on the planet happy when they moved off of Monte Ellis.
Yeah.
Really? You're going to move off Monte, who's a scoring machine and has been part of this franchise for this Steph Curry kid who we just drafted? Nobody liked that move in the time.
Joe Lacob was booed by the crowd there at the Coliseum down in Oakland. They hated him for it because Monte Ellis was a cult hero.
Yeah.
Well, it turns out that getting Andrew Bogut, having Steph Curry and Klay Thompson, it was the right move.
Right.
That was critical to their opportunity to go out and start their little dynasty run.
Right. I mean, Steph's arguably one of the greatest players of all time, not just the greatest warriors, one of the greatest players of all time.
Yeah. So you need that sometimes. I mean, there's a lot of, there were people that thought Masai Ujiri was insane to give up so much to get Kawhi Leonard. But he took the swing and it worked out and they won a championship.
Yeah. That's a smart move.
503-248-0620 is your telephone number. How much sleep did you get last night? 2 hours? 3 hours?
Dude, I was contemplating. I was like, I told Chad I'd come in. I better get up. But I think I went to bed about 1, woke up about 5:30.
And then the problem is once you start reading about a prospect, like I was down a rabbit hole of videos and reaction because I wanted to know what other people, especially outside of Portland, thought about the pick.
Right.
And the consensus is that people were just confused. It's weird how we react to things when I think we have certain expectations or anticipation for different events. And when it doesn't play out the way we had envisioned in our minds, it freaks us out.
That's it. I think that's absolutely it.
All right. Young Hansen, the newest Trailblazer, taken at number 16. Portland able to collect a first-round pick and 2 second-round picks during the process. We're going to hear more from Joe Cronin. Chris and I are going to be with you up until 9 o'clock. A special AM edition of the Rip City Drive here on your home of the Blazers, 620 Rip City Radio. All right, special AM edition of the Rip City Drive. What's going on, my friends? Chad Doing and Chris Burkhard with you. We'll be on for the next hour as we react to the Trailblazers' surprising moves last night in the NBA draft, trading back 5 spots with the Memphis Grizzlies. They pick up a first-round pick and 2 additional second-round picks, and they select young Hansen out of China with that 16th overall pick in the draft. The Blazers very excited because Joe Cronin and his crew got their guy. Elsewhere in the draft, you got to love Danny Ainge basically giving a middle finger to Ace Bay, saying, no,
Right.
we're going to take you, and you're going to come to Utah.
Yeah.
He didn't want to go to Utah, but he's in Utah now.
That's also a very Danny Ainge move, right? Like, no, oh, no, this is how it's done.
Yeah, because look, I understand, like, if you have the gravitas, like the game and the power to be able to say, no, I'm not going to play for you, more power to you if you have that ability. But if you're Ace Bailey and no one knows if you're going to be a star or not, no, you just need to play the game the right way, go to Utah and do your thing. So I thought that was great because Ainge, it was kind of a flex. Like, no, I'm Danny Ainge, and I don't give a flying rip if you want to be in D.C. or what your plans are. I'm going to select you because you're the best player available.
Maybe you should have gone to some workouts.
You can't play it that way if you don't have – like, if you're Cooper Flagg, you can basically be like, I'm not playing for you. I'll go back to Duke and make more money, but I'm not going to play for you. You can do that because you got the game to do it, and you're the surefire number 1 pick. But everyone else, it's like, no, just – go to the team, go to Utah, and make things happen.
The part that confuses me about Ace Bailey is I think he'll have a chance here in Utah too, but like the teams he said he was interested in playing with were all teams where like he could go in and probably just be the best player, like be a star, right? I don't know how you had the potential to be the number 2 overall pick and you don't want to go play with Wemby and Jeremy Sohan and De'Aaron Fox and a team that's going to be really, really good.
Yeah.
Like the Spurs very well could be a very good playoff team. You don't want to go play for that? You don't want to go to workouts and try to prove to Dallas that you're better than Cooper Flagg and go play with Anthony Davis and Kyrie Irving when he's healthy? And like, no, you want to go play for Washington? Okay.
What was the more surprising move, Cronin trading for Drew Holiday or the selection of young Hansen?
Oh, this is absolutely the selection of young Hansen, without a doubt. A guy that was, again, projected late first to early second rounder. I mean, the Drew Holiday one it was shocking, but it wore off. I think there's people woke up today like, is the draft today? Was last night a dream? Because that's crazy.
What else jumped out at you in the first round outside of the Hansen pick? Anything else?
I think it was interesting because if you look again, this is why mocks aren't necessarily to be trusted. I mean, most mocks got like the first 3 picks right, and then it started to fall apart. I mean, Igor Demon, who was a guy I think the Blazers really did like. Blazer fans might have not liked it because he's listed as a guard, but he's 6'9", can guard multiple positions, which is great. When he went 8, I think that shook up the Blazers board a little bit. I was surprised that Carter Bryant lasted as long as he did because I really liked him. I think the Murray Bulls pick had people surprised as well, which is funny because if you watch that one, he gets selected by Toronto and they zoom in on him and he definitely drops an F-bomb because he wasn't happy. Like there was definitely a few surprises for sure. I don't think there was a bigger surprise, though, than what Portland did at 16.
Now, the one team that I was confused with, and it's not a surprise based on their franchise and their history, but the Brooklyn Nets selecting like 5 guards last night. Like that's a franchise where I'm like, what are you guys doing?
Dude,
buffoons.
I don't get it. I sat there with Sean on that pregame show and said, I don't know anything about the draft, but I do know one thing. The Brooklyn Nets will make a trade because there's no way in hell they're dumb enough to draft 5 picks to this draft. And then they drafted 5 picks.
Yeah.
And none of them really made sense for what they're trying to. That was a bad draft by them, man.
Yeah, they're terrible. That's a bad franchise. And, you know, it's just like football or any other sport. The franchises that suck always find their way up to or near the top of the draft, and then they continue to make puzzling decisions. I thought that was crazy. But I wanted to ask you this. What was the consensus? What did you think, and what was the consensus before the Blazers had Memphis select for them at 16? Of the guys that were available, who did you think they were going to take before the pick was made?
Gosh, that is actually a good question because I think people were really zoned in there at the 11th pick, right? Because there was a lot of players that they liked.
Yeah.
Right? Obviously, the Carter Bryant being one of them, Asengu being another one. I think your guy, Asa, I think he was one that people were looking at too.
That's who I thought they were going to take. only because that was a player I knew that kind of fit the profile of what they'd be looking for. And he's a player I had seen a little bit of. So I thought, yeah, Newell makes a lot of sense there.
Yeah, he made a lot of sense. The other player that was available, and I'm Jakasionis. I know I mispronounced that. I apologize. But Kasparas Jakasionis out of Illinois, good player, good athlete, good shooter, 6'4". So probably not the player that Portland definitely wanted to add to this because they're obviously going long and guys who can guard multiple positions. But by all accounts, Miami getting him at 20 was a steal. A lot of people kind of had him in that 9 to 12 range. So when he was available, I think he was the one that a lot of people were thinking they were going to pick. I know a lot of people were texting me, KJ, that's who they wanted. So that was kind of the feeling. And so then, when Jan came out of left field. But it was definitely kind of the Asa Newell and then Kasparas who were really getting the heavy load of people thought they were going.
You know, the one thing that I still don't think gets enough attention, the Dallas Mavericks having the number 1 pick in last night's draft. Like, I was watching that whole thing play out. We knew Cooper Flagg was going to go number 1. But it is unbelievable to me that the Mavericks, think about the ride that they went on this year with their idiotic general manager. They trade away Luka. They don't get any assets in return to be able to rebuild their franchise. 1 first-round pick, Anthony Davis. One of the dumbest moves I've ever seen in all of sports. And then they have the injuries take place. They lose Kyrie. They miss out on the postseason. A complete disaster of a season. Anthony Davis gets hurt in the first game coming over from the Lakers. And then with impossible odds, they land the number 1 pick and get Cooper Flagg.
Yeah. And screw over the Blazers in the process, right?
Do you think that's a good situation for Flagg from the standpoint that he's going to go to a team with veteran players, a team that can compete? So you get Anthony Davis, you get Kyrie Irving, you get guys who know how to play, you got Jason Kidd. Is that a better situation for Flagg where he doesn't have to come in and be the number 1 guy from the get-go? Or would it have been better for him to go to Portland or a place where he would have had a chance to really be the guy from the start? What do you think? What do you think about that process for Flagg?
I think what makes Cooper Flagg unique, Chad, is that in most instances, I think it's better for these guys to go to teams that are established a little bit so they don't have to be the guy.
Yeah.
But I think Cooper Flagg is talented enough that if he would have gone to a team like Portland or Washington or Charlotte, who's a bad team, he would have gone in and been the guy, no problem. They're like him and the Victor Wembanyama's, right, who can just come in and just take it over.
Mm-hmm.
But I do think this is better for him because I think Jason Kidd's a good coach. I think they got a good roster. I mean, I don't think a lot of people knock the organization outside of the dumb things that Nico has done trade-wise, right? I think it's a good situation. You get to learn a little bit from AD. You get to learn a little bit from Kyrie. You get to learn from vets like Klay Thompson, right? I mean, that is a good thing, and then you get to take over and be the guy. I think he's in a great situation to thrive.
Don't you feel the same way about Harper going to a place like San Antonio with that culture and the players he's got around him?
Oh, it's San Antonio. I think San Antonio is going to be scary, man. I think they got a great culture, great team around them. I think Harper has a chance to come in and be a stud. They also got Bryant, who was my favorite player in the draft. I think they hit a home run with those 2 picks. Like, yeah, Harper's going to be good. Great team around him. San Antonio is going to be nasty.
All right, one question that Joe Cronin was asked last night, I think it was Kerry Agers, is this team going to make the postseason? Is this a playoff team? Here's what Joe had to say. I was curious how he'd follow this up because he talked about the postseason after the season in the postseason presser. Here's what he had to say last night.
Possibly. I really like where we're headed. I love the steps we took last year. I'm excited about the steps we're going to take this year and beyond. Would love to get through this transaction window a little further. You know, we still got a big trade window and free agency coming up, but you know, as is with the stuff we've done already with the guys we have coming back, I'm very excited about this group. I don't necessarily have expectations of them reaching some benchmark other than I want to just see them keep getting better and better every day, every week, every month.
All right, there you have it. All right, so he didn't really back off. I think they want to be a playoff team. What were they, 23-18 in the final 41 games, the second half of the season? Last year, they were, from January 1st to the end of the year, I think they were 6th in defensive rating. So they go out and get Drew Holiday. If this team is let's say they're a top 10 defense from start to finish, would they win last year, like 34 games, somewhere in that area, 36, 34? I don't think it's a stretch to say that this team could win 42 games, 43 games, and put themselves in postseason contention. Is that crazy talk?
I don't think it is.
No, of course not.
Because ideally, if this thing is doing what you want it to do, they improve upon last year, right? That's what you want. Last year, 36 and 46. And you sit there, if you win 4 more games, right? You're a 40-win team. That's what Sacramento was as a play-in, 9 seed, right? So I definitely think that's not out of the question to be in contention for, that play-in spot. And if you are a play-in team next year, again, that you're showing that progression, and that's a good thing.
Yeah, so last year they were 36 and 46. So I think for me, the benchmark, I look at this team, they got a chance to, I think 45 wins. 45 wins, I think, would be quite doable. You get somewhere between that 45 to 50 win mark. You continue to grow as a group. And then the other part that I'm excited about, too, aside from the maneuvers they've made with Drew and getting Hansen, but and Joe talked about it last night, but internal development, right? Like they continue to really work with these guys. We don't know the type of leap we're going to see from Scoot, from Shaden, from Denny, Tamani, and then Donovan Clingan. If those guys all continue to progress, they're going to play even better than they did last year. And I'm really excited about having, Holiday here and Anthony gone, because now that's going to mean the basketball is going to be in the hands of guys like, Denny,
right,
Scoot, Shaden, Moore, and giving them a chance to really, facilitate the offense. I think that's a good thing.
Absolutely. And Sean brought up a great point yesterday, Chad. I don't know if you had a chance to hear it, but he was talking about how you remember.
Hear it? You think I'm going to listen to you too?
I wouldn't.
Get the F out of here.
No, if I were you, go take a break. But no, he brought up a great point talking about how, Chauncey came under fire a little bit when he mentioned how, this team doesn't really have an alpha, right? And maybe that was, the guy on the court who wants to take over. But also you look at the best players on the roster last year and the guys who were your vet leaders. And it's no disrespect to them. It's just Jeremy Grant. He's more of a quiet guy, right? Mm-hmm. Anthony Simons, much more of a quiet guy. Ayton is playful and this and that. He's not necessarily the I'm going to yell at everyone, rally the troops type guy. Drew Holiday he's going to crack the whip a little bit, right?
Yeah.
He's going to get you. He is a vet. He's a leader. People will listen. He's a bit of that alpha mentality this team is lacking. And I think that can go a long way, maybe opening up some of these players who are a little bit more passive.
Yeah, because who was their leader? Really, Denny Avdia kind of became the leader as the season went along, and the vocal leader where he kind of spoke for the team.
Absolutely. I think he did, and I think that the play and the players reacted to that. So having a guy like Drew, too, to come in and, again, just sit there and be that vocal guy and not let anyone, go, 50%, right? No half-assing it. You got to go in. I think that's valuable, man.
How crazy is it that their longest tenured player on the team is Shaden Sharp?
Isn't that wild?
That's so
Isn't
wild.
that wild?
I had a few people hit me up, too, wondering if they have to pay a tariff on young Hansen. I thought that was pretty funny. Gosh. Yeah, people were stunned. That was a maneuver that no one saw coming.
No one saw coming. But it
reminded me of Happy Gilmore, where Vern Lundquist is like, "Who the hell is Happy Gilmore?"
Right?
Who the hell is young Hansen? Oh, that's good. All right, we'll keep things rolling. If you want to jump on board, 503-248-0620. Michael Shacker with us. Special AM edition of the Rip City Dive. Big props to Chris Burkhard. Didn't sleep last night. At Moda Center, at the practice facility. Man, came in this morning to hang out with me for a couple of hours. Coming up later on today, Rip City Drive at 3. Travis Demers going to be in studio from 3 to 5 here on your home of the Blazers, 620 Rip City Radio. All right, some of the funny stuff I saw last night. A few people reached out wondering if the Trailblazers have to pay a tariff to bring in young Hansen from China, the 7-1 center that they selected at number 16 last night. I saw someone tweet out that they hope that Ayton, who looks like Chris Tucker, plays well with Hansen so they can buy Blazers Rush Hour merch. I thought that was comical. And then you said there were a conspiracy theory that the Blazers selected Hansen controversially so they could have access to the Chinese market to increase the value of the team for the sale.
Yes, that is the conspiracy theory floating around in Blazer circles. People, I don't know if people understand, quite honestly, how big the NBA is in China. It is ungodly popular. I remember a couple summer leagues ago, I was talking to some production crews down there who were filming games entirely vertical, right? Like on your vertical with your phone, basically, which is weird to this market. And I asked why, and they're like, the Chinese market. They watch games they watch all content vertically on their phone. So we're just trying to see if it helps. So it is huge in China. So this is a good pick for Portland when it comes to that.
I watch all of my stuff horizontally.
Yeah, I do, laying down. No.
Yeah, no doubt. All right, the Blazers take young Hansen. A couple other things from Joe Cronin. And I asked Chris this earlier, but, he turns 20 today. What's the timeline for young Hansen? Because even Nikola Jokic, who's the best player in the world right now, it took him, multiple years before he really took off. Here's Joe.
I mean, he's a very capable player. His skill set is very, very advanced for his age. His physical stature, he's mature physically already. He's not a young, gangly guy. Like, he's strong and firm and sturdy and can withstand the strength of these NBA guys to a large extent. There's obviously a lot of work that we can, there's a lot of improvement that can still come as he grows and matures. But, it's going to be an adjustment for every young player coming into this league. It's a whole new thing playing against these guys. These guys are really good. These systems are really intricate. Competition's very steep, both on our roster and the guys we're going to be playing against. So there'll be adjustments for him, just like every other guy drafted tonight. So it's our job to get him there as quickly and as well as possible. It's, player development's critical for us, and I think it's something that we've done really well, and we're excited about this opportunity to, grow him into a good player.
There's Joe Cronin. One other little comment. This is pretty interesting, but, someone was asking about the ceiling for Hansen. What is it? Here's what Joe had to say.
His ceiling's very high. It's extremely difficult to find a young player of that stature with this skill set. And it's translatable stuff that we've seen, really, really skilled big men that can do all the things that he can do, typically succeed in our league. Yeah, it might take him a little time, but as he figures out the speed and pace of our game and all these things, I wouldn't put a ceiling on him. He's that talented.
No ceiling. Like, Burkhard, that's some high praise
that
from
is
Joe
high
Cronin.
praise. I don't know if you say that lightly. You know what I mean? Like, that is high praise. Interestingly enough, Chad, you brought up Nikola Jokic. Nikola Jokic drafted 2014, famously in the middle of a Taco Bell commercial, right? Did not play that first year because he stayed in the pro leagues overseas. Comes in as a 20-year-old with Denver in 2015-16. Averaged 10 points, 7 rebounds, 2.4 assists. Not terrible, but not the 30, 12, and 10 that he averaged this year as a contender for MVP, right? Like,
was he drafted the same year as Nurkic?
Yeah, you want to know where Nurkic was drafted?
First round.
Where?
Top 10?
16th.
16th.
So so maybe, maybe the 16th pick, but you get the Jokic instead of the Nurkic. I mean, there's connections, okay?
Huh. Yeah, so we can't expect much in year number one then. This is going to take some time. Because what are the minutes he's going to get this year? Garbage time minutes?
Oh, I would think.
Yeah.
5 minutes here, 6 minutes there until he can contribute. I mean, as of right now, I think the best center on your roster is DeAndre Ayton. Your backup center is Donovan Clingan right now. And if you're all healthy, you got Robert Williams. And then you got who's playing, Dwap or Young.
So what do you think Cronin is looking to accomplish next as he enters into the free agency period and the trade market? What's he trying to do?
I think offloading one of those two centers, Ayton or Williams, and then seeing what the market is for Jeremy Grant. That's plain and simple. I do think as much as we've been sitting here harping Grant has to go, this pick might facilitate that one of those centers might be more so the priority. And I think if you're looking at those, that I think realistically DeAndre Ayton might be the one you're trying to get rid of first, because I would say, okay, if I get rid of DeAndre Ayton, then I can start Donovan Clingan. Robert Williams is my backup, but I'm probably, if he's healthy, I'm not playing him on back-to-backs. I still got to watch his minutes. We got to remember the injuries and stuff. Is even going to be ready to go for the season. That gives Jan a window to get in and get some more minutes if that's where you want to go to develop your young guys. Now, if you want to try to be competitive, maybe you're trying to trade Robert Williams first because you want to keep DA around.
I would think that would be a huge win. If you can, you've already moved Anthony out. If you can move Grant and one of the centers, Williams or Ayton, out before the season begins, that's a good thing.
Yep.
That'd be a win. Because you got to have another center in there. Someone's got to be able to take up minutes next to Clingan. Because what can Clingan play right now? About somewhere between 25 to 30 minutes a night?
Probably. Yeah, he's still not, play a full game guy. He gets winded. I mean, give him credit. He was much better by the end of the year than he was at the beginning of it. But part of that was just by force, right? Because they had no healthy bodies.
Will they be players in free agency at all? Or is it going to be the trade market where they get things done?
Gosh, I'd have to look at what the actual free agent market is. There might be some vets that they can bring in on a vet minimum just to fill in that gap there. Like I said, I still think that if they do end up trading Jeremy Grant, they're going to need some depth at power forward. They need someone behind Denny. But yeah, I still think the best way to do it, quite frankly, is I think the best way to do it is through the trade market, Chad, because I think the best way to do it is if you get rid of Jeremy Grant and his 30 mil or DeAndre Ayton and his 30 mil, you bring in two guys making 15, right? Or a guy making 20 and a guy making 10. Turn that one guy into two, take that 30 mil, make it something that's a little easier to chew on and get rid of if you need to, and build out your roster that way. I think that's the better way.
That's what I'm hoping for. You get like two players for one.
Yeah.
There's got to be someone out there that needs Jeremy Grant. I mean, Grant can still be a productive player for a contender, couldn't he? He can shoot the three ball at a high percentage.
Jeremy Grant, absolutely. Yeah. I think for a contender, he's great. It's just what contenders need that spot with that money allocated to it. But at the same time, if you're trying to contend, that money's not an issue. You're going to do it. You're going to get in there. But I think if you can find a team where he is the fourth guy, maybe even the fifth guy, yeah, it's a lot of money. But I think that role fits him well and does make you a better team. Funny enough, I got to find this, Chad, because Jeremy Grant, I think, is the key. He is the key to unlocking everything about your roster. All right. I want you to listen to this. Okay. It's going to take a minute, but bear with me. In 2014, the Cavs traded a future draft pick. That pick went on to be Jeremy Grant. Cleveland won the NBA championship 3 seasons later. Philly drafted Jeremy Grant. They traded him to OKC in 2016. The very next season, Philly had their first 50-win season since 2000. OKC, they traded Jeremy Grant to Denver. They just won their first championship. Denver, they had a sign-and trade with Jeremy Grant to Detroit. Then they won their first championship a few seasons later. Detroit, they traded Jeremy Grant to Portland in 2022, and the Pistons just had their first 40-win season in a decade. The point is, good things happen to your team after you trade Jeremy Grant.
You're right. Jeremy Grant is the key to unlocking everything that Joe Cronin's trying to accomplish. Gosh, that's crazy. Yeah, I think Grant is the number one priority now, and then looking to move one of those centers.
Yeah,
that's the way I see it.
I still think Grant's the number one priority because, I mean, Jan is just 20 years old today, right? So you can slow play him. It's fine. You can roll an entire season with DA if you need to and see what happens at the deadline or whatever and still be good in the long run. Jeremy Grant, I don't think you can have him and Denny Avdia without some butting of the heads.
Okay, so after Grant, who are your backup fours then? Like Jabari Walker and Chris Murray?
Mm-hmm. And I don't like that. That's why I think
Those are the guys.
Yeah, that's why I think you're looking at you got to try to do a 2-for-1 and bring in some sort of power forward wing depth there.
And it'd be nice if you could, hopefully find players that are younger than Grant.
Yeah. I would say the plus side, too, with the way the roster is, obviously, you can do the little bit of the shuffle, right? So you bring in Matisse Thybulle, put him at small forward, and then you slide 2 over to play some minutes at the power forward position, which is obviously a viable thing. We saw that all year long, too. But I want some true power forward depth behind Denny.
And then what we're looking at, honestly, would be Scoot, Shaden, Klingon, Denny, and Tamani as your starters. That's your starting 5?
In the long run. In the long run.
Yeah, what was the consensus on who's going to start at point guard?
I don't know if there was
Drew?
one. I do think the most people I talk to are still leaning that Scoot Henderson is the guy. I know you're leaning that way. I'm leaning that way. But again, we don't know. That's just kind of what we want to see, how we're feeling. I don't think Drew needs to start. But again, it could be that Oklahoma City situation. He comes in, starts for a year, turns the team around a little bit, gets them competitive, shows your young guard some things, and then he bounces.
503-248-0620 is your telephone number. The Trailblazers trade back 5 spots. And with that, they're able to collect a first-round pick and an additional 2 second-round picks. And then from there, they have the Memphis Grizzlies select Young Hansen from China. And he's a 7'1" center with a 7'3" wingspan. And according to Joe Cronin, he has no ceiling. That's how much they like him. I mean, this guy is big time. Cronin was asked last night what the ultimate goal was in the draft.
Yeah, the goal was to get as far back as possible. We didn't want to overdraft if we didn't have to. We weren't much more comfortable beyond 16 than that. So for us, it was too important to get him. We decided to do what some would call a reach. We decided to take that swing and overdraft technically a player that we just really valued. It shows what we thought of him.
Will he be definitely with the club next year, or is it possible that he stays in China for a year?
The plan is to bring him over here next year.
Wow. He even admitted to overdrafting. The other player I'm excited about, one guy that I like because I saw him a lot in the tournament, Walter Clayton Jr. I mean, he's going to Utah, right? I'm excited about that. I like his game. I thought he was a big-time player. He's one of those guys I want to see how he turns out in the NBA. And it was cool to see Ron Harper hanging out at the draft.
Right. Yeah. All the old heads around. Yeah, Walter Clayton, like you said, going to Utah. Not a terrible pick there, but yeah, I still like Carter Bryant to the Spurs. I really wish Portland could have got him. I liked him a lot. I still think the Spurs just had a hell of a draft. And then, Noah Sengu, I think that's another good pick there for the Bulls. Portland fans that were looking at him because he was available at 11 too. There's a lot of players I'm intrigued by for sure.
503-248-0620 is your telephone number. If you want to jump on board and share your thoughts, you can do so. Let's go out to the phones right now. Chris Burkhard, Chad Doing with you on this special AM edition of the Rip City Drive. Let's go out to George in Portland. George, welcome to the special AM edition of the Rip City Drive with Chris Burkhard and Chad Doing. What's on your mind?
Hey there. I was wondering if we have enough assets now that we have 5 cents to go after Giannis Antetokounmpo. Maybe trade Jeremy Grant and Aiden and even throw in Klingon. Now, if you can get Antetokounmpo in a package deal and make a sweet enough deal for Milwaukee to buy, I think now it's just to go after him.
Well, I love Giannis like everyone else, but, the Blazers don't have the type of assets that Milwaukee's going to want in return for Giannis, do they?
No, because unlike Dallas, Milwaukee's not trading Giannis for one good player and a single first-round pick. Think about that. You guys can hate the pick of Jan all you want, but for the 11th overall pick, Joe Cronin got as many firsts in return as Dallas did for Luka.
It's true. That's true. Let's go out to, my man, Tim in Milwaukee. Tim, welcome to the show, my friend. The stage is yours. Fire away.
Hey, Chad, thanks for taking my call this morning. This morning I'm wearing a pair of chino shorts and a pressed button-down shirt. I have 2 quick questions I hope you have time for. My first is the Blazers historically seem to send out the narrative that they've drafted these hyper anomalies. I'll give you a few examples. One we just parted ways with, Anthony Simons was supposed to be the Dame replacement. We can go back to Sebastian Telfair, which was supposed to have generational upside. Martell Webster was supposed to have franchise upside. We can go all the way back to Arthritis Sabonis. By the time we got him, from the time we drafted him, he wasn't even an all-star caliber player, although he was a definite difference maker. My first question is, why should I believe the Blazers have found a gem in the rough this time? And then I have a Drew Holiday follow-up if you have time.
Okay. Well, go ahead and hit me with the Drew Holiday, and then I'll address both questions at the same time, buddy. What's your thoughts on Drew?
My question about Drew is, why does he keep getting traded? If I look back on the teams that he's been traded from, each time they have had a chance to repeat success with him as a part of the equation, but he seems to leave as soon as success happens. And I'm wondering if there's just something I don't know about why that happens. Is it salary issues or what is it?
Hey, Tim, those are two great questions, and we'll address those right now. In regards into why you should believe or trust that the Blazers have found another gem in the rough, I mean, all I can tell you is that this is a different regime. This is Joe Cronin and Mike Schmitz. This is not Neil Olshey. This is not, Kevin Pritchard. This is a different regime with a different front office and a different set of eyes. All I can tell you is that so far, the returns on what Schmitz and Cronin have done together is solid. Very good work in terms of being able to identify talent and locating these guys, whether it's Tamani Kamara, who I think we'd all agree was a sweet pickup in the trade with Dame. They went out and landed Denny Avdia, who no one knew about or even thought was coming to Portland. They landed him on draft night last year. He turned out to be a super stud. Donovan Clingan, who they took in last year's first round, very productive as a rookie last year. And then we're seeing the emergence of Shaden Sharp and Scoot Henderson, two guys that were drafted by this regime. So far, the returns, it's not a guarantee, but it gives me hope that these guys have a pretty good eye for talent. I mean, how do you see that?
Yeah, I would agree. I think they've been pretty good. And it's just the nature of the NBA, too, Tim. It's like sometimes players just, you're going to miss. You're going to miss sometimes. And just if the draft was a perfect science, these GMs would be batting 1,000, man. And they just don't. It happens. Now, I do think right now, I think Joe he's a plus hitter right now. He's doing good. The Tumani thing is phenomenal. The Denny thing, which we are all scratching our head, what's going on? They gave out the extra assets to get him. He's been wonderful, right? They looked at Shea and their star potential. It's just about hitting it, right? I would even argue and push back. And even though he was mocked in that area, when the Blazers picked Damian Lillard, there was a lot of people who were like, who? Like Weber State didn't pay a lot of attention to Weber State. People were calling him Damian Lilliard, right? They didn't even know how to pronounce his name. CJ McCollum, the only thing people knew of CJ was Lehigh versus Duke, right? So, yeah, sometimes you go and that pick hits and it's wonderful and it changes your franchise. And sometimes it just doesn't pan out. But right now, these picks are all looking good. Like I said to you earlier, Chad, if for some reason Scoot doesn't pan out to be a megastar and Shea doesn't pan out to be a megastar or whatnot, one thing I think they've all proven is that they're NBA talented players. They're not going anywhere. If the worst thing that happens for Shea is he's in the league for 15 years as a rotation guy, that's probably still considered a win of a draft pick because there's not a lot of people who do that.
In regards to Drew Holiday and why he's, bounced around a little bit, he had some injuries early in his career, but the maneuvers in terms of why he was sent out of town was not because the teams that had him didn't like what he brought to the club. They were just looking to go in a different direction and reshape the roster. And Holiday was a valuable piece for them to be able to do that. And then if you look at the last two stops in Milwaukee and then Boston, he was a missing piece that allowed them to get over the hump, with what he brought, with leadership, with defense, and his playmaking ability. And, I can tell you this, Tim, based on everyone I've talked to and the reporting and people that know him, Drew Holiday is considered one of the truly great guys in the NBA. Great teammate, great work ethic. That's why I wasn't even concerned. Oh, by the way, what was the consensus on this reporting about Holiday being unhappy or upset with the trade to Portland?
First off, when it comes from a website that you've never heard of before, that's your first red flag. You look at it, looks like an aggregate website that AI built, and then it was very, very quickly debunked by multiple. Sean Hyken, Danny Meringue, Aaron Fentress, every single one of them. My sources debunked that quite quickly. I think more so it's easy to say someone is irritated that they got traded because no one likes being traded. And it's just easy to run with it and, create a fire. But, yeah, that thing was debunked quickly.
Hey, Tim, thanks for reminding me of Sebastian Telfair and Martell Webster. Arthritis to bonus.
Yeah. I just want to point out, too, with Drew Holiday real quick. Philadelphia, they went full on rebuilding this bad boy, traded him. They won 19 games the next year. They were trusting the process. New Orleans, he was very, very good. But then what did New Orleans do? They blew it up. Anthony Davis, everyone out, they're trying to rebuild. He goes to Milwaukee, core part of a championship. The only reason they traded him is because lots of money everywhere. They need things to work. Oh, and we can get Damian Lillard? Yeah, I'm going to take Dame. But then Drew, core part of a championship in Boston. And the only reason he was traded right now is because Boston's dealing with that second apron and has to readjust their books a little bit.
Yeah, Chris is right. It's no fault of his own, Tim. Holiday is he's a fabulous player, and he's been a great teammate for an extended period of time. All right, Brandon in Portland and Bob in Hillsboro. Don't go anywhere. We'll get to your phone calls in just a couple of moments. All right, like usual, my good friend Rachel taking everything too seriously. Hey, Chad, I thought you were Arthritis Sabonis' #1 fan back in the day. I am. Sabas is one of my favorite Trailblazers of all time, and the first time I saw him at Moda Center, the brand new Moda Center at the time when he came over to play for the Blazers, I had never seen a big man that could play like he did. With his skill level, his passing ability, he could shoot the three, he could do everything. But when the Blazers got him, he did have arthritis. And he's also one of the only guys that had the strength or even came close to having the strength. And you have to have a big ass. You got to have a giant booty to deal with Shaquille O'Neal, and he did. He was sturdy. That was a strong dude. I love Sabas is awesome. Freaking awesome. I just wish that they could have gotten him when he was in his peak Sabas days before Arthritis Sabonis came on.
When he was one of the best players in the world. Yeah. That would have been.
I love Kevin Duckworth, but we all know what happens. You take Duck out, put in Sabas, and that team is basically unstoppable.
You've had a couple more parades down Broadway is what I'll say.
There's no question about it. Let's go out to Bob in Hillsboro. Wants to share his thoughts on the Blazers' needs. Bob, welcome to the show, buddy. What's your take on where the Blazers sit today?
Well, first, let me go back a few years, and I'll just say this about Joe Cronin. He's head and shoulders, way head and shoulders above Neil Olshey. Neil Olshey drafted C.J. McCollum instead of drafting Giannis Antetokounmpo. Neil Olshey couldn't put together an NBA title contender. He was terrible. Neil Olshey was the worst GM the Blazers ever had. And I know Godfather likes to defend Neil Olshey a little bit, but anyways, my last night, I'm kind of scratching my head a little bit. The Blazers now have 5 centers. I'm not doubting Joe Cronin. I like the moves he's made. I like the players he's drafted. I'm in his corner. But this team still doesn't have a doggone power forward. Come on, no power forward? What are you looking for in a power forward? Why can't you bring a power forward to the Blazers? When was the last time the Blazers had a decent power forward? Aldridge?
Yeah, LaMarcus was definitely there, above average for sure. Let's think about this for a second, Chris. Denny Avdia, Tamani Kamara. Do you consider either one of those guys a power forward?
The modern NBA, yeah. Both of them. Both of them can play that position incredibly well.
But yeah, Bob, LaMarcus was the last great power forward they had. LaMarcus was great.
I mean, Denny Avdia, 61% of his minutes this year at power forward. So clearly, and his best minutes at that position as well.
And Tamani's probably their best small forward since Batum.
Batum is the benchmark for, I think, any small forward. It's been a very long time since they had anyone anywhere close to that.
Let's go out to Brandon in Portland. Brandon, welcome to the show, my friend. What's your take on where the Blazers sit today?
Hey, well, good morning, guys. I briefly do want to say I agree with the last caller regarding Olshey being arguably the worst GM in franchise history. I mean, I know the salary numbers have changed, but, look at some of the contracts he signed. Evan Turner, $70 million. Alan Crabb, $70 million. Alan Crabb was almost unplayable 2 years later. Gary Trent Jr. got overpaid. He gave Myers Leonard 4 years, $40 million. Re-signed Zach Collins to a big long-term extension when he was unproven. So I just want to say I definitely agree with that take. That being said, moving forward, I thought this pick was a little strange to me. Dame's last 2 years were tanking, and Dame is pleading going into those drafts, hey, move this pick and bring in a win-now player. I want to stay here. And the year we drafted Scoot, what was Cronin's reasoning? He says, we need to take the best player available, So when I hear that, and then I hear you guys saying today, Cronin acknowledging, yeah, we overdrafted on this pick, to me it doesn't resonate with what has happened leading up to this point. And I'm just curious your guys' thoughts on that.
All right, I appreciate that. Good phone call. What was it, the 2017 draft when Olshey took Zach Collins and Caleb Swanigan?
Gosh, oh my gosh, that's the draft right there.
He had 3 picks in the first round, used a pick to move up to get Zach, and then they took Caleb Swanigan.
Oh, and Swanigan was not good.
And that was a disaster.
He was wonderful at Summer League, but being a hustler helps you at Summer League. I think the answer to that the question that was asked. So I was saying that prior to the show yesterday too as well, that I think it's in any GM's best interest to draft best available, because you never know what's going to come down the line. Maybe someone calls and wants that pick. I think this one just changed a little bit for the organization on the fly, as it does, because a guy they'd been scouting for 2 years was available, was reportedly getting some interest from some other teams, and they wanted to make that reach because Brooklyn could have took him at 19, and they wanted to grab him then. So when a guy you want is available, sometimes you do it. That's the same reason the Orlando Magic, by a lot of accounts, overpaid for Desmond Bane, because there's a guy you want to make sure no one else gets him.
All right, Bobby, here's Cronin addressing the point you brought up about having 5 centers on the roster.
No, I'm not worried about. We have a lot of centers right now, a lot of good ones. I think we'll figure that out over time. You know, we approached every draft with, we're going to draft the best player available, or we definitely make that a goal of ours, and this was no different. You know, and we'll figure it out afterwards. But we'll see how this summer goes, and you know who's here at the start of the season. But I expect even if all of them are here, okay, we have 5 centers. Let's figure it out.
There's nothing wrong. You know, different GMs like Olshey had a fetish for small guards. Like that was his thing. Cronin apparently loves centers. I'm okay with that. The Blazers are longer now. You know, like do you have any sports fetishes? Like when it comes to the NBA or basketball? Like my fetish is two-way players. I like guys who, you know, can play on both ends of the floor. I'm out on even if you can cook on offense. If you can't give me a lick of D, I'm out on you. My fetish is two-way players now.
Yeah, I like the player, the archetype that is tall, great wingspan, and I like the ability to just plug and play into multiple positions, because you can't be a guy who just guards. I'm a small forward, so I only guard threes. No, you get switches, you get fast breaks, everything. You might be stuck on a 1, you might be stuck on a 5. You need to guard everything, and that's the player that I like.
Like, look at the finals. Remember, you and I were blown away. Like, both teams, the Pacers and the Thunder, just a wave of guys, starters and on the bench, who could come in and play, versatile players with length and that were willing defenders. And both teams had great success in the postseason.
Both teams, top to bottom, guys who filled that role. And it's like when you talk about, getting Jan, and maybe he's a depth play. Depth is important too. I mean, those games in that series aren't as close as they were, and it might not have gone 7 if it wasn't for guys like T.J. McConnell, right? Game 7 was closer than it had any right to be for a large chunk of that game once Halliburton went down, because McConnell had a really good game. They just all ran out of gas late. Depth matters.
It does. And the Blazers got depth now. I like that. And the roster's completely been turned over now. Longest tenured Blazer is Shaedon Sharpe.
That's wild.
And we have a bunch of guys who I think fit that Chauncey Billups personality now, willing defenders.
Yeah.
All right, Chris, great work yesterday.
Thank you.
I thought you and Sean were fabulous. Thanks for coming in and joining me this morning.
Remember I said the other day, you asked, so I showed up.
Big thanks to Michael Shacker. And then don't forget, later on today at 3, Rip City Drive, Travis Demers is going to join me in studio for a couple of hours before he goes and celebrates his younger son's birthday. Lawson, happy birthday, Lawson.
Today?
Today.
Oh, my gosh. Young and Lawson?
I know.
Amazing.
They're going to Black Bear Diner.
Nice.
He wants to get some of those bear-shaped pancakes,
nice.
From my understanding. All right, so that's coming up at 3. Travis Demers in studio with me as we continue to break it down. I thank you for listening this morning. Big thanks to Chris Burkhard, Michael Shacker. You guys have a good night.
So the Portland Trailblazers select Colin Cowherd here. This is a young man with the ultimate bet on yourself story.